The Métis people were born in the space of the wide-open Canadian prairie. The children of white fur traders and Indian women, they became known as half-breeds. The Métis developed a culture distinct from both their European and Indian parents, and played a vital role in the birth of Western Canada. But as settlers pushed west, Métis lands were taken and their people dispersed. The Métis were almost wiped off Canada's map. Batoche. More than a century ago, my ancestors fought in the 1885 resistance, commonly known as the Northwest Rebellion. This former battleground is filled with ghosts. Métis who lost their lives fighting for their existence as a free nation within Canada. I've studied the history, but in this place of pilgrimage for the Métis, I'm not certain if those voices speak to me. My name is Merelda Fiddler, and like many Métis, my journey will bring me here. But it begins elsewhere. In 1788, my great-great-great-great-grandfather Peter Fiddler sailed over from England. A surveyor for the Hudson Bay Company, he married a Cree woman. Together they had 14 half-breed children. Today, thousands of his descendants remain on the Canadian landscape. Through his map-making, Peter found security in an unknown land. Now I'm charting my own map, drawn from my experience, and from others who've already made the journey to Métis. This is my story. A cairn in my hometown pays tribute to the mapmaker Peter Fiddler, but it was his descendants, the half-breeds, who helped carve this town out of the wilderness. Not Indian, not white. It must have been hard to never really fit in. And race has always been an issue here. Beneath this town's peaceful surface lie deep divisions. Still, Meadow Lake, Saskatchewan is a typical northern town, surrounded by lakes, rivers, and forests. Quiet, homey, it's a great place to raise kids. After defeat in the resistance of Batoche, my great-grandfather fled to the United States. Eventually the family returned, and my grandfather settled in Meadow Lake. My grandfather built bridges, and my grandmother was a cook. They raised 13 half-breed children, and like many Métis, spoke French, Cree, and English. My father is the baby of the family. When I was 3 years old, my father and mother divorced. My grandmother, Valina, passed away around the same time. Without my dad or my grandma, there was little to link me to my Métis family. People say I look remarkably like Valina. They also say I'm just as feisty and stubborn as she was. Her death left a void in my life. My mother raised me on her own, and while I always felt secure and loved, I lost my Métis heritage. Whenever I come home to visit my mom and sister, we talk about the past. Joyce, my only sibling, is 17 years older than me. She grew up surrounded by my dad's family. My Métis cousins were all Joyce's age. They were my sister's world, and the white children at school were outside her experience.
at the school. We did our cheerleading or ball games or whatever together. We hung around together at the school. But once school was over, the Native kids went their way, the white kids went their way. See, being fair, they didn't pick on me. When they found out what my last name was, then they'd sort of say a few things to me. But my attitude with them was, whatever, you know. And when we met at the school again, we were like this. But after, it was just at the schools that we, you know. And then after we grew up, we just, you know.
Did you know then that you were Métis?
What they're calling half-breed culture now is different than what I would have called it a long time ago. But to me, I grew up as being an Indian. Because when I went to school and all this, we weren't Métis, we were Indian kids.
You were half-breeds.
Or half-breeds or Indian kids or whatever. Now is when they brought in the Métis stuff.
Or First Nations.
Or First Nations.
Mm-hmm.
To me, there is no Métis people. We're all Indians. That's how we...
There's no Indians now.
Yeah, but the thing is, I'm not saying real Indians, but I'm saying when we grew up, we were Indians. We weren't real Indians, but we were classified as Indians, not Métis. I think I grew up good, being what I was and who I am. But I can't answer for Merelda.
I always knew I was a half-breed, but I never thought it made me different. Then a friend of mine was having a sleepover birthday party, a big deal when you're 10 years old. But the day before the party, she dropped a bombshell. My dad says you can't come. Fiddler is an Indian name, and he doesn't want any Indians in his house. She tried to tell him I looked white, but I still wasn't welcome in their home. From that moment on, I wanted to blend in. I never wanted to be a half-breed again. I raced toward my high school graduation. I ignored everything in me that was Indian. When people asked, I was French. For those who knew better, like my cousins, I was a sellout, white, inside and out. But I didn't care, because in the big city, in university, wherever I ended up, I would be free, anonymous, and empty. When I first got to university, I was free. Few could identify my Métis heritage from my last name. But soon, I started meeting other Aboriginal people proud of their history, and I knew something was missing. A product of the fur trade, white traders and their half-breed families would eventually converge on Red River in present-day Manitoba. From there they would use their trademark Red River carts to travel across the prairies, hunting buffalo. Called Métis, from the French word for mixed, many spoke several languages, including French, Cree, and English. This made them perfect middlemen between Europeans and Indians. Their culture drew from both these worlds. Even their dress was a mix of the two, combining buckskin jackets, moccasins, European shirts, and of course, a Métis sash hanging from the waist. When their work was done, the community would celebrate, jigging to their unique style of fiddle music. When the buffalo dwindled and European settlers pushed west, the Métis united as a nation to fight for their way of life. Their flag, bearing an infinity symbol, declared their intention to go on forever. Years later, it would be Métis leader, Louis Riel, who would negotiate Manitoba's entry into Canada. But once in, the Canadian government annexed their land for incoming settlers, and this forced the Métis west.